Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Balwant.
Yeah. So the next one will be like we see the same time, but the difference possibly will be um, the next one will be seeing the difference. So tomorrow we can see a clear difference actually. So let me try the next expression. So what I'm saying for every 4 minutes, this one. Um, this one and minutes. Okay, and seconds and minutes must be specified as integers. So this 1/4 is allowed only for the days and day in a week and day in a month only allowed this expression. The forward slash only will be allowed in a, I will mention over here, is allowed only in a day in month or day in weeks only it is allowed. Okay, so this will confirm on that. So if I gave like 15 over here, seconds, minutes, hours, day in a week, if I give 1/4 here and day in month and execute, it is allowed. And then if I give here day in a month, I will give a question mark, and here I will give week, sorry, day in a week also we can give day in a week. So you hope you are guys are following. So I can share you the document also. So this forward slash is allowed only in a day in a month or day in a week, not for hours and minutes. Okay. So this is what this both is not going to work. First thing was in minutes and hours it is not allowed. And how about the last one? This one. Uh, 15 minutes. Execute. Seconds and minutes must be specified as an integer. So comma also not supported in this. So we have comma also supported only in a day in a month and day in a week. All this range, comma, slash only allowed in day in week. Only allowed in a day in week. Okay, it's already there. Day in a week. Um, so allowed in day in a week and day in a month only it is allowed. Um, we can say um, not allowed in seconds, not allowed in seconds and minutes. So we can give it in for hours also. We can give. I guess this comma also. I guess we are supported in hours. I guess. So if I give over here as 0, if I give like 5 comma 10, every fifth and 10th hours. Okay. In hours also it is allowed. Mm, say comma will be not allowed in minutes and hours. Not allowed in minutes and hours. Not allowed in minutes and hours. According from expression in X. Here. Here we can see the seconds part, minutes, hours. The allowed characters are comma, range, star, and forward slash, and day in a month. You can see the allowed values are day in a month also we can use, and month also we can use this, and in a week also we can use, day in a week also we can use, and this is also optional year. That also is valued. So what we have not discussed was only hash. Hash is yeah, nth day of the month. Okay, and if it is a specific numbered day, weekday or week month. So I guess month it is not that much required, but so the nth day of the month. Okay, so let's say I want to run in a month. I want to run a second Saturday. So that second will be defined using this one hash nth nth day of the month. So weekday, let's say I want to give like Tuesday. So Tuesday will be referred as a 3, right? So 3 hash day in a month. That's how we have to give this one. One second, sorry, this is only available for the day of the week. The number before the hash specify the weekday, that is Sunday to Saturday. The number after the hash specify the day of the month. For example, specifies to means the first Monday of every month. Okay, this is what actually nth means. First Monday. So if I gave like here a 3, it will be a third Monday. So before the hash will be defined as a day in a week, and next to the hash will be a defined as this nth day of the month. So where we have to give this one hash would be given in the week values. So where is day in a week? So here it will be defined over here. And for the last week of the month. Okay, I think this document it's mostly a easy explanation and give some examples over here. I can share you one this document so that it will be so much clear. You can refer at any point of time. This is a standard documentation from Salesforce only. Okay, this is the developer.salesforce.com where the Salesforce provide the documents for each one. Okay, do we have any questions in those? Hello? Sorry, I can't hear. Hello?
No question.
Okay. Okay, take a look of this document and try to try some examples. So it will be more, it will be some kind of interesting thing. So you can check immediately and less code you will use, but it's good to know. Okay, and easy to practice for this one. So this is what the cron trigger and cron expression was. Cron trigger is what the object that we are looking at, um, where we can see all the schedule, all the scheduled jobs from where we can see all the scheduled job stored in object called a cron trigger. Okay, I think that's mostly on a cron expression. Cron expression is used to define the um, what is the frequency of the scheduled job and when to run will be extracted. This is what the cron expression will be, cron trigger. And now I want to give some introduction about triggers. So before we jump on the triggers, if you have any questions, you can ask, and then I will explain this custom iterable also on high level. And before we're jumping onto that, that's all for asynchronous apex. So we have seen future method and then queuable method, batch apex, and schedulable apex. So any questions in these areas? Hello?
No question.
Okay. Okay then. Now, jumping onto the triggers, what actually a trigger was, and in short, we'll call it as a apex trigger also. So these triggers are, I think, to make you familiar, this will be mostly similar to what we are doing in a flows. In flows, if you remember, when we are making some changes to the record, that is like we have like automations, right? Like workflows, process builders, and flows. All this, what we are trying to do, whenever the record is being changed, so when certain conditions are met, we are trying to do some other actions. If you take the workflows, then what we're trying to do, if some conditions are met and when it's created or updated, the record is being created or updated, then what we're trying to do, we're trying to do some actions like email alert, updating a field in the record, or like creating a task or sending outbound messages in a workflows. Whereas in process builders, we have some more actions available apart from this, posting into the charter or submitting for a approval or custom notifications or updating a related records like parent to child or child to parent, and yes, more actions compared to workflow. But whereas in flows we have more flexibility that we can make the change before save or after save, and we have create, before create, after create, if it's a update, before update, after update, and then like a delete, we have some more features compared to a not features, some more flexibility we have compared to a um, process builder. Whereas Apex triggers, it will be having some more flexibility and a very precise control also you will be having in the Apex triggers, where there will be some jargons we use in the triggers. Those are called trigger context variables. Tri- Trigger context variables, and they say trigger types, they'll say, or the possible triggers we can set, or like types, or we will say trigger events, trigger events, events or trigger types. Those are like we have like a two combination. What is the DML operation and the before context and after context. That is, so when we're trying to create a new record, then the DML, what will be the, when we're saying a create, as I will trying to the events I want to define in a create, we have a two events, that is called before insert and after insert. So here um, we actually split the triggers into two parts, before triggers and after triggers. So for every DML, it will be having a two parts of it, before and after. Those are called trigger events. Those are the trigger will be called for every event. If you say, let's say if you create a record, then in net trigger will be called twice. One is for an event called before insert, and other event called after insert. And similarly, when you have a um, um, when you are modifying the existing record, then you will be having a before update trigger and after update trigger. So these are like a two events you will be having. So when you modify any of the existing record, the trigger will be called in a two scenarios. One is for a before trigger, sorry, before update, and one is a after update trigger. So those are called events. So I will give like more explanation when we're actually writing the code, but you have to remember those are the events in a trigger. And when the trigger will be called whenever so trigger will be written on the objects. So if you take apex class, it is not dependent on anything. So you will write a apex class and use that apex class in a visual force pages. But whereas we will write a apex triggers, it is on a specific object. Apex trigger can be written on a single object. It could be a standard object, or it could be a standard object or a custom object. But we can write the apex triggers only on a one object. It could be a standard or a custom object, in short. And for each trigger there will be a multiple events. That's what we are trying to list out here. What are the possible DML operations? Create, and then update, and then what we have will be a delete. So delete EML, what we'll be having here, we'll be having a before delete, and then we will be having a after delete. Then we'll be having a one more operation called a undelete, DML. So in the undelete DML, we don't have a before scenario. We'll be having only one scenario called a after. After undelete only we'll be having. These are all possible. Sorry, um, we'll be having a before undelete and after undelete. These are the total 8 trigger events that are available in a apex triggers. So we call it as a apex triggers, or what we can say custom trigger, somebody say. But usually it will be called as a apex triggers only. If somebody say custom triggers also, the same thing they were referring to. Okay, and this trigger context variables, if I want to explain the trigger context variables, these are the events of the trigger. So when a trigger will be fired, so when a workflow will be fired, so there are three options, right? Like when record is created, or when the record is created, or every time it is edited, or second scenario. The third scenario will be created or edited every time subsequently meet the criteria. Only below criteria is met, then only it will be fired. That is the triggering context of a workflow. Similarly, a process builders, when it will be fired, only two options, that is a created, second option will be created or edited. And when we are defining the conditions, there will be mentioning if the specific change is happened, then only we'll be calling, or every time we're calling. And there in the actions like update fields will be options called retrigger or execute other workflows. We have option, right? So here we don't have any control in the apex trigger. Whenever you do any DML operations inside the trigger, it will be taken as a fresh start of a DML, and everything will be executed when there is a record change is happening. Okay, similarly, the trigger events will be like how we have in a workflow and process builder. Here we'll be having a before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, and for undelete as well. These are the events when a trigger will be fired. And so what we do, Apex trigger will be written on a either standard or a custom object, right? So on which object we are writing a Apex trigger, whenever the record on the same object records are modified or created, then only the trigger will be fired. Let's say you are writing a trigger on a account object. So when this trigger will be fired, when you are creating or modifying or deleting or undeleting any records on the account object, then only the trigger on the account will be fired. Okay. And what are the scenarios it will be firing? So if you're creating a record, there will be two events, before and after events. If you're modifying it, there will be two possible events. If you're deleting it, same, undeleting, same. So these are the different events. Okay. When it is fired, it will come with some context variables. When I'm saying context variable, so if you call a apex method, um, so it will be a blank usually. So whatever there in your block of code, only those only you will be having a data. Let's say if you write a SQL query, you will be having a data in it. Otherwise, whatever the variable you declare there, those are the variables. Or if you have any parameters for that method, those will be a parameters to it. So when I'm saying a trigger context variables, so whenever a trigger is fired, the context variables will be having a data of the records what is being fired. Those are called trigger context variables. So those variables are, yes, I will list out all variables. Trigger dot new, trigger dot old, and trigger dot new map, trigger dot old map, and then we have a trigger dot is before, trigger dot is after, trigger dot is insert, trigger dot is update, trigger dot is delete, trigger dot is undelete. So these are all Boolean variables. Those are having only true or false values. All this will be true or false values. These are map variables, list variables. So what is the list here? So let's say, for example, I was writing a trigger on an account object. Then these two variables will be a list of accounts. These two variables will be a list of accounts. So what's the difference between new and old? I will explain tomorrow. But these two variables are of a list collection type. Whereas here, this will be a map of account. So what is actually map? How it will be defined? It is a key value pair, right? So while I was giving account object, so what will be the key? What will be the value? ID will be the key and value will be the account. That is, so let's say if I have account record modified, then one record if I modify in this list, I will be having a only one account record. So this list size will be a 1 and the map size will also be a 1, but it will come in the combination of a ID and a account as a map. Key will be ID, value will be a account. Okay, and the boolean values, boolean variables. So these variables is used to define what is a trigger event. So one trigger can have, it should have at least one event and can have a multiple events as well. So when you're having a multiple events in the same trigger, you don't know, right, how to let's say my trigger, I mentioned that it has to be called before insert and after update. These two events I want to write the trigger. So I'm using the same trigger for the two events. I have some piece of code that has to be run for a before insert, and there has to be a some piece of code that need to be executed for a after update. So first of all, I need to know what is the context that is running, whether it's a before insert or after update. How can I know? By using this context variables, I will know. Trigger context boolean variables. Those are if it is a before context, it could be like insert, update, delete, undelete. It could be anything. If it is a before context, then this will be true. If it is a after, then the before will be a false. Similarly, if it is a after context, then it will be a true. If it is before, then after will be a false. And this will define what is the DML operation being triggered. So if it is insert, it will be true. For all remaining DMLs, it will be false. For update, update will be true. All remainings, it will be false. Similarly for delete and undelete. Any questions so far? It may be more I was giving over here, but I will explain. I will try to explain some more time tomorrow. But just it will be kind of a rough sketch I was trying to explain. Trigger. The context will be the syntax will be trigger. Our trigger name on your S object API name, and then in brackets we will mention all the events, like the events will be um, before or after, followed by the DML operation. When we have multiple values, it will be comma separated values, and all your code block will be goes here. I would say this was syntax of it, and if I want to write some example, it will be like before, like below. Trigger. I want to write, let's say, my account trigger. I want to give it could be any name, like the variable name. There should be no spaces, and similarly, like whatever the context we have for the API name, all rules will be applied for this one also, and then followed by the on. And if I want to write on the account object, and then my context will be um, before before update. Sorry, if I want to add some more, like after insert, let's say. So this trigger will be fired in two events. That is a before update is one, and after insert is one. There are two events that will fire this trigger. And you can write all possible scenarios also, or at least you have to write one event. Any questions we have? See,
So Bala, in the events, before and delete event is not possible, right?
yeah, yes, I need to check that before until it is there or not. Well, there's a chance. Agree. But I will check and come back on this one. Okay.
Okay.
So I was just trying to create a trigger called Apex trigger. So the UI will be file, new, and Apex trigger. Here we'll just will give a name. Let's say I want to give a SSC trigger, and here I will select the S object, selecting the account object, and submit. this have this trigger and your name on a subject name. You can mention whatever events you have here. At least you have to mention one event. Okay, and you can write all the code. It will be the code will be similarly how you write your Apex class, but in Apex class you will be having a constructor and all, but in triggers you will don't have any classes and methods, and we don't write methods also in triggers, and if you write also it is really invalid, we can say. Why? Because let's say if I write a method in trigger and we cannot call from somewhere some other Apex class to this methods. Why? Because it's completely irrelevant writing a methods in a trigger. Okay, so how we write in anonymous block? Like you can write any code in a anonymous, right? Similarly in trigger also, it's similarly the same thing. You can directly write a piece of code. There is no need of writing a methods and classes inside a trigger. It's completely irrelevant writing a classes and methods inside a trigger, but you can write a separate class and method, and you can call those methods from the trigger. Okay, so we will discuss more on this triggers, writing a triggers and different events and context variables. All this we will discuss in deeper tomorrow. Okay, but if you have any questions, you can ask. Any questions you have? Are we good? Yeah, there might be any question. Like we not discussed much, but any gap that you feel in Apex triggers, at least you understand the context. Like when the triggers are fired, or like what actually trigger was, and what is meant by a context variables, what meant by a trigger events. At least you have that understanding or not. That's what all I was expecting.